everybody, welcome to Cooking with Willie G. Today we will be making 4 loaves of sourdough sandwich bread. I will be showing you the whole thing from feeding the starter to baking the bread. So let's start out with feeding the starter. This is the starter that's been in my fridge for about a week. Been in my fridge for a week. So now I'm going to show you how to feed the starter. For feeding the starter, you always have to make sure how much starter you need. Today we're making 4 loaves of bread. Each loaf of bread will have 400 grams of flour. That means we'll need 1,600 grams of flour in our dough in order to make 4 loaves. Since it's winter time, I'll need my dough to have 15% starter. And when it's warm part of the summer, I like to use 10% of the starter. When making your bread, always relate the percent of ingredients to your flour. For example, 1,600 grams of flour with 10% starter, you would need 160 grams of starter. Since we'll be using 15% starter, we'll need 240 grams of starter. Making sourdough bread makes it a lot easier if you have a digital scale.
I don't know what it means.
Since we have 240 grams of starter, we'll need 120 grams of flour and 120 grams of water. I like to feed my starter with all-purpose flour and a little bit of rye flour. A little bit of rye flour into the bowl. Now, until this flour reaches 120 on the scale. Now we need 120 of water.
It's okay.
Now we are adding our leftover starter from the fridge. It's really important to make sure you mix in all the dry flour. Now here's a little tip for when your starter is rising. Use a straight glass jar with 2 rubber bands. I'll explain the rubber bands in a little bit. Now put the starter in the jar. Okay, the black one is for where your starter is when you first mix it. The yellow one is to put your cap on when you
Okay.
Now we wait up to 8 hours for this to double or triple in size. And then we can mix up our dough and put it in a warm place. Okay, it's 8 hours later and look it, this tripled in size. I think this will be good. First thing we need to do is weigh our 240 grams of starter. It's probably going to be the whole jar or everything that I can scrape out of it. What's ever left over in the jar, I'll save for the next batch and put it in the fridge. Now here's the main ingredients. Strong bread flour, salt, honey, and olive oil, and water. When mixing dough, I always think of my ingredients of mixing percentages. This dough will have 60% water, 15% starter, 2% salt, a tablespoon of honey, and a couple of tablespoons of olive oil. Now I like to top off the last 100 grams of rye flour. Now I'm going to add the olive oil. Now I'm going to add the honey. And now I'm going to reset the scale. And now I'm going to add 32 grams of salt because that's 2% of 1,600. And now all we need is the 60% water. Now we just have to add the water, 960 grams, which is 60% of 1,600. And if you're going to start making sourdough, get used to using percentages. Now we add the water. Now you're going to use your dough hook on your mixer on low to medium speed for about 10 minutes. And we put this on. It's been about 10 minutes. Now it's time to check the dough. I like to put this in a straight bucket so I can see how much it rises. Once again, I use the rubber band to mark the level. And I cover it with beeswax paper. Now we're going to let this rise overnight until it doubles or triples the size like the starter did. And if you keep it in a warm place, it will double or triple a lot faster. And if your kitchen's not very warm, it will take a lot longer. In my kitchen, we usually mix it at 9 p.m. and it's ready to shape at 9 a.m. the next morning. Good morning. We've waited 12 hours, it's 9 o'clock, and the dough rose so much that the rubber band popped off. Now I like to put the cornmeal in the bread pans to keep it from sticking. And now we dump this out. We have to punch it. And this takes the air out of the dough, and it will come back later. Now we have to dump it. And now we're going to divide this all into 4 equal parts. And you can lightly flour the surface, but not too much. And make sure this is equal and then cut it in half. And now we're going to separate them and put them in a football shape. You have to put a little flour on our fingers, but not too much. And then start folding it in from every angle. And after you're done making the football shapes, put it in the pan seam side down. And like usual, cover them and put them in a warm place. I like to cover my bread pan with shower caps because it's really easy. This is where I like to rise my bread because it's nice and warm and it gets up to 80 degrees and there's a fireplace. Right now it's just under 3 hours for when we shaped these this morning. I'm guessing these have about an hour to go because I want them to rise above the pan. In about an hour, they should be ready. It's time. It's been like an hour, and look at how much it rose over the pan. These are going to be really good, and let's go bake them. Make sure to take the covers off nice and gently because then it would stick. But we have olive oil, so it won't stick as much. Ready to bake. Now we're going to bake these at 400 degrees for half an hour, or until it gets golden. Make sure you always put half a cup of hot water in the oven, which it creates steam. Put the water into a hot pan in the oven. It will help to rise in a softer crust. Okay, it's all ready. It's time to take it out of the oven. And after you take them out of the oven, they should be golden brown. And this is the best part.